Hi, welcome to a new semester. What I'm going to do now is to show you how you can use Linux when you are actually using Windows as the native operating system. And it is a really quick way to do it too, because you don't have to install anything. Everything is already pre-installed. For those of you who want to run Linux natively on your PC, that's fine too. You just have to make sure that you have all the right tools installed. Okay, for the rest of you who want to take the easy way out, let's go to Internet Explorer first, and we'll go to a few websites to get all the necessary tools. The first place you want to go to is the Power website. It's power.arc.losrios, losrios.edu. And once you go there, you want to scroll down a little bit, and you will see my link on the left hand side. It's the second last item. It's Dr. Tech's Debian Live CD. You don't want to get the Debian installer CD because that would install the operating system. The Live CD has everything already installed, so that's the one that you want to get. When you click it, you want to make sure that you download it to a particular folder. So we'll go ahead and save as, and we'll put it into a particular place. So we'll go to Documents and create a new folder here. And we'll call this new folder deblive, Debian Live. And then we'll put the file, which also has the file name deblive, but it has an extension of .iso, into that folder. In other words, we're going to put all the related files into that folder. This will take a while. You can see that it's a rather big file. It's about 2 gigabytes because it is the image of a DVD. So as the system is doing this, we'll go ahead and do some more downloading. The next website we want to go to is the website for QEMU. And just hold on a second, let me find the link to it. Alright, the link to that website is LASSAUGE. It's a French word. I have no idea what that means. .free.fr. And this is the website that you can get QEMU, which is kind of like VMware, except this is fully open sourced, and it works really well. Alright, so let's go to a sub portion of this one, which is QEMU. So you can just click QEMU here. And this is the website where you can download the latest version of QEMU. And it's down here. We'll go ahead and grab the last one, QEMU-0.15.1. It's a zip file, but Windows know how to open a zip file. So we'll go ahead and open the file directly once it is downloaded, because there's no need to save it. You just want to install it. And this will take a while too, because, well, it won't take nearly as long because it's only about 6 megabytes. And it is already done. The QEMU file is already done, and Windows is now opening it. So what we want to do is to extract all the files. Click Extract All. And we do want to control where we extract it to, so we'll go ahead and take a look at the folder that we created last time. And I have to find out where I put it. Is it under my documents? Yep. Okay, so that live is right here, and that's where I will decompress the file to. So I just click OK and show extracted files when complete, and then you just go ahead and extract the files. When it's all done, since the computer is doing something that will take, well, just a little bit of time, I can explain it. When it's all done, we'll create a batch file, and the batch file can be double-clicked from the GUI in Windows. And once you double-click the batch file, it will start up the Linux environment as a virtual machine automatically. And that's basically as easy as it gets when it comes to running a Linux environment on your PC that is natively running Windows. In other words, you don't have to install Linux on your system. There's no dual booting. You don't have to worry about the installation of Linux will mess up your Windows partition or anything like that. This is really clean and neat at the same time. Alright, we are almost done here. And by the way, I'm running Windows inside the virtual machine because my native operating system is actually Linux. So that's why Windows is running it seems to be running a little bit slower than usual because it is actually running inside the virtual machine. And my hardware is actually pretty out of date by today's standard. It's a Q6600 quad-core processor, which is about, I would say about 1/3 of the speed of the latest quad-core processor today. Alright, so now we have everything decompressed and the file is still getting downloaded. We have another 10 minutes to go. I'm not going to waste any time just sitting here and wait for the download. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to that folder, QEMU Windows-0.15.1. Now one thing you want to remember is this entire folder, deblive, you can put it on your hard drive, but it's much more convenient to put it onto a USB thumb drive because then you can take the Linux environment and everything else along with you, and you can run it on the machines in the lab. You can run it on the machines in the classroom. You can also do it inside the library. So that gives you a lot of options to run Linux in order to do your homework. The other thing is you want to make sure that whatever external device you put this folder on is a relatively fast one, because USB thumb drives are usually pretty slow. So when you want to get a SD card that is rated at, I would say class 4 would be a good starting point. Class 4, class 6 would be good. Alright, I will talk about that again a little bit later, but let's go to that folder and basically just quickly see what we have here. These are executables. QEMU is the main executable. What it does is it will run a virtual machine. You can double click it right now. It's not going to do any damage. It's going to start up and it's running a PC. It's emulating a PC inside a PC. So when you do it by itself, it doesn't really do anything because there's no hard drive, there's no CD-ROM, there's nothing for it to connect to. So that means we kind of have to wait until we have the other part done, and we are close. We only have about 9 minutes to go. The next thing we want to do is to create a virtual disk. This is pretty easy. We use the tool called QEMU-img to create that tool, to create that file that will pretend that's an emulated disk image. To do that, you want to get into the command line portion of Windows. CMD is the name of the command line. And oh, it's still searching. Yeah, it's really slow because it's downloading files and doing all the other stuff at the same time. So now we want to go to My Documents, go to deblive, deblive, and then we go to QEMU Windows, and then do a dir, and we can see that these are the executable files. We want the QEMU-img file. When you run that executable by itself, it doesn't do anything. It just displays a bunch of help files or help messages to teach you how to use that particular command. We'll go ahead and use it right now because we still have a long time to wait for the entire ISO file to download. So what we'll do is to run that file as QEMU qemu-img, and we'll say create, because what we're doing is we're creating a single file that will serve as an entire disk to the virtual machine. So this is really cool. And we want to control the type of that file because there are multiple different formats that you can use. Depending on what you want to do, there are choices, and I will explain those formats a little bit here. You use -F to specify a particular format, and in this case, the formats that we can choose, one is called QCOW2. Then you can choose RAW. You can also choose a format that not VirtualBox, VMware can read. But my recommendation is a format called QCOW2. Now QCOW2 as a format is very nice because the file that you're creating does not really have to be as big as the disk that you want to create. Now I know this doesn't seem to make any sense, so let me finish the command first, and then I will come back and illustrate or explain what I mean by that. So we'll say QCOW2, and then we give it a file name. In this case, we can just give it a file name of disk.qcow2. The file name doesn't really matter because the extension in this case is not that important, but I like to use the extension to indicate the type of the file. And the last portion, okay, my Windows wants to restart because it has finished updating something, so I'll go ahead and say do it again in 4 hours. Postpone. Alright, so now the last part is to specify how big of a disk do we want to create. Okay, I'll choose 2 gigabytes, which is more than enough for your homework assignments. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back and explain what this command is doing. qemu-img is the name of the executable. Create is telling the command to create a file because it can also do other things like checking or converting and so on, and resizing. -F is an argument to specify, okay, what type of format do we want to use? The default is already QCOW2, but I want to make sure, double check and make sure that it is a QCOW2 format, so that's why I choose -F QCOW2. The next part is disk.qcow2. That's the name of the file, and then we have 2 gigabytes. We want the disk that we're creating to be a 2 gigabyte file, to be a 2 gigabyte disk. Now, let's go ahead and run this command. It won't take much time, and we'll do a dir and take a look at the file that we just created. Disk.qcow2 only has 197 kilobytes, not even close to 2 gigabytes. That's one nice thing about QCOW2 is the file corresponding to the physical disk will only gradually increase in size as you use content or as you use up content on the disk drive in the virtual machine. So that means initially the file doesn't have to be that big. Now this is both good news and bad news, because the good news is you don't really have to deal with a large file to begin with. It makes it very easy to back up, and also potentially you can run this on an external drive like a USB thumb drive that doesn't really have the capacity to give you 2 gigabytes of free space. Now the downside is when this is growing, it will continue to chew up more space on your external hard drive or USB drive. If it's a flash device, it's no big deal because fragmentation is not an issue with any type of solid state disk. On the other hand, if you have an external hard drive and you're growing this file gradually, it can lead to fragmentation. So you might need to run a defragmentation program on your external hard drive if you're using an external hard drive. At this point, there's really not much to do, except we can still have one more thing to do. We can go ahead and start to edit a batch file, so that this way you don't have to remember how to use QEMU all the time when you need to run it. So what we'll do is we'll use I know what you guys are thinking, but we'll do it anyway. We'll go ahead and use the really archaic text editor that actually comes with all Windows. It's called Edit, and we'll go ahead and create this file. I like to call all my batch file that starts up virtual machines, they all have a prefix of VM. So in this case, it's VM deblive, start up, Debian live.bat. And yes, this is a very, very archaic, text editor, but it works well, and it can deal with some things that Notepad cannot deal with. So it has its advantages. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and just type the command. QEMU is the command to start up the emulator. And the first thing we want to do is to supply dash lowercase m, and then we want to specify at least 512 here. What this option specifies is how much memory do we want to allocate to the virtual machine. In this case, I'm allocating 512 megabytes to the virtual machine, which is enough. It doesn't give it a lot of spare space, but for what you're doing with your homework assignment, that should be fine. Now, if you have a PC that has tons of memory left, you can go ahead and give it, 1 megabyte or close to 2 megabytes. The largest you can give it is 2047 or close to 2 gigabytes of memory. But for most people, 512 is fine. Okay, that should not be an issue. The next thing you want to do is to specify dash CD-ROM, and then you can specify where is the image corresponding to the CD-ROM drive of the emulated machine. In this case, it is in our parent folder, because remember, this is one folder down from deblive, and the name of the ISO file is also deblive, but this time you have to specify .iso as an extension, and we'll just do it like this for the time being. Okay, so now we're all done. We can press Control F, or excuse me, Alt F to pop up the menu here, and then we say we specify X to exit, and click say yes to save the file. So now if I dir again, I will see VM deblive as a batch file. Alright, I'm going to minimize this for now, and our download is almost done. We have 51 seconds to go. Very good. And we want to switch back to this part here. Actually, we want to switch to the parent of this folder. Alright, let's do it again. As you can see, I don't really use Windows all that much, and so I'm kind of slow when I'm using Windows. Yeah, it's an excuse, but I'll bet you can see that I can use Linux a little bit more proficiently compared to using Windows. Okay, 10 more seconds to go. I hope it's not going to scan it for viruses, because scanning a 2 gigabyte file inside the virtual machine can take a little bit of time too. So that can be Yep, looks like it is trying to scan it for disk for viruses. Yep, running security scan. Alright, let's just double check if the file is here. I can run the batch file. Okay, the file is actually here. Windows has a bad habit of hiding extensions of files that it understands already. So we can just go to properties and double check. Opens with, okay, so it knows this is an ISO file. Very good. And this means we're ready. So we can now go back to QEMU Windows -0.15.1. This is where the executables are. The emulator executable is, and it's also where our batch file is located. So we'll go ahead and start the batch file. Now, we want to be able to do this. Just double click on the batch file. However, the first time, it's always better to do it inside the command line interface, because if it doesn't start up, this will tell us why it is not starting up. So inside the command line interface, just type the name of your batch file, press the enter key, and It's not working. Okay, it's not working because it cannot find the CD-ROM, I think. Alright, let's go ahead and change that. Oops, no VI. That's another bad habit of mine. I want to use VI where I cannot have VI. Okay, it might have to do with the backslash issue, because in Windows and DOS we use the backslash, and in Linux we use the /. Okay, let's give it another try. It's still not working. That is rather odd, and it's not giving me an error message either. Alright. That is very strange. Let's take a look at stderr.txt. That's the output of QEMU when something is not right. So let's go ahead and, oh, cat is another Linux command. I have to use type here in Windows. Could not load PC BIOS. Oh, okay, I see. This is another little thing about the differences between the Windows and DOS. Okay, I know exactly how to fix it. Edit vm deblive.bat, and we need to specify, if I remember correctly, it's -L, and then you specify the folder BIOS. What this is the virtual machines. The virtual machine is just like a real PC. When it starts up, it needs to know, where's the BIOS, or the basic input-output system of the computer. If I don't specify this option, it doesn't know which folder contains the BIOS files. So that's why it complained, and so I saved the batch file again. And if I show the directories, you can see there's a subfolder called BIOS, and that's where the BIOS files are contained. So we'll go ahead and try that again. And this time it starts up, and you can see this is the virtual machine. You have several options here. Okay, once the virtual machine starts up, you can choose live persistent or live non-persistent. It doesn't really matter in this case because at this point we're really just testing it. We're just playing with it. So I'll just go ahead and pick live persistent. It doesn't really matter. So the next thing you see is almost like the startup sequence of a typical Linux box, except in this case the Linux box is a virtual machine running inside Windows, which is kind of neat. And this might take a while depending on the actual speed of your computer. It also depends a lot on the SD card or the USB thumb drive or the external hard drive that you're using. If you use a slow one, it will take a long time, and it will take even longer when you start to do stuff inside the virtual machine, because typically the read speed of a USB device is faster than the write speed of the same device. So that's why it is important to pick a nice SD card or something like that for this purpose. Costco sells 8 GB SD cards for, I think it's on sale right now, so it's $25 will get you 2 8 GB SD cards. That's not a bad deal, but if you can find a better deal, that's even better. Those cards, for about $12 each, is a class 4, which is more than sufficient for what we are doing. And also remember, we don't have to burn any actual DVDs. The ISO image is downloaded, and it's used immediately by the emulator because it doesn't need to be burned to an actual DVD. So that's really handy too. Alright, it's configuring the networking, and this is another thing that you might have a question about is, inside the virtual machine, how do I hook up to the internet? Well, as long as your host native or the native operating system is connected to the internet, the virtual machine will use the host operating system as a bridge to get to the internet. So you don't have to worry about internet connection from inside the virtual machine. You don't have to worry about security aspects of the virtual machine, because the virtual machine is basically invisible from the outside. So we're getting there. The startup sequence does take a while, because remember, this is an emulator running inside an emulator. This entire Windows operating system is already inside the virtual machine, so I'm running a virtual machine of Linux inside a virtual machine that's running Windows inside an actual machine running Linux. So that's basically what it is right now. It's taking a little bit of time to do this, because we are losing quite a bit of efficiency in the process. Oh, it's having a problem starting up the graphical user interface. It's basically doing this and then switching back and starting again. That might have to do with not giving it enough memory. Oh, okay, it starts up just fine this time. Once it starts up, we can test how much memory is left. If you have a higher end PC running Windows natively, this should go pretty quickly. I mean, it shouldn't be nearly as slow as what you're seeing here. All right, it's still starting up the virtual the GUI of the virtual machine. Let's minimize that, and there really is nothing else to do. Okay, now once you click in that window, strange things will happen, because you can see that the title bar switches to QEMU, press Control Alt to exit mouse grab, because it has quote unquote grabbed your mouse. So that means it's not possible now to click the Windows icon, because the mouse is no longer available to Windows itself. But that's okay, because if you want Windows to regain control of the mouse, you just press Control Alt on your keyboard, and now you have your mouse back. Now in this case, it's a little bit tricky, because oh, that works too. Okay, it's probably stuck because I didn't give it enough memory to run the GUI. So what I'll do is I'm going to close the emulator. It's actually safe to do that, and go ahead and change my batch file to allocate a little bit more memory. Control F, exit, Alt F, exit, and then run it again. And you can also, when you start up, you can also make it start in text mode instead of the graphics mode, because if you cannot start it up in graphics mode, it's probably a good idea to start it up in text mode first. And to do that, you press a tab. You press the tab key when the cursor is on live persistent, and that will give you the full command to start up Linux. And what you do is to type space and then type TEXT at the end of that line. So what this does is it's telling the kernel when it starts up, don't even bother to start up the graphical user interface, and this way it won't consume nearly as much memory. And we can check, basically how much memory is consumed at this point. To do your homework, for the most part, you can use the text mode. But obviously, running the GUI can be helpful too if you want to open up multiple terminals to look at the same file at the same time. So this will take a while. It's going to take a little bit of time, and we can do some other things at the same time. Now, when you have your SD card or external USB drive, go ahead and copy this entire deblive folder onto the external hard drive or external USB drive. Then you can just take that drive anywhere. Every time you want to start up the Linux environment, you just have to go to the QEMU Windows-0.15-1 folder and double-click on the batch file that we created this morning. That's all you need to get it done. The virtual machine is still starting up, so we still have to give it some time. It's really slow because remember, we are running a virtual machine inside a virtual machine inside a virtual machine that is at least 2 years old already. So processing resources is not plenty here. Yep, if you can see me, I'm twiddling my thumbs right now, just waiting for this part to be over. It's almost there, almost. So basically, if you can get to this part, following the instructions, you're doing really good. If you cannot get to this part, you probably need to go back and watch the video again, just to make sure that you follow every single step correctly. I just need to, finish this, make sure I can tell how much memory is available, and also teach you, what is the default password for the administrator on this machine, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do what needs to be done in the next session. It's getting there, just slowly. There we go. Alright, finally we get to the command line login prompt. So you want to log in as root, which is the system administrator in Linux, and the password of root is ball, B-A-L-L, and that should log you in, just like that. And the command top will show you how much memory is available and how much is being used, and you can see that we have 1 gig of memory allocated. Oh, okay. And only 400 megabytes are being used. We still have a lot left. So the GUI environment should start normally. It's just that when we started it, maybe I didn't give it enough time. You saw how slow it was to even get to the command line login prompt. Okay, now when you're in the virtual machine and you want to log out, don't just click the X button on the virtual machine. Now that's okay for the most part, but it's really not a good idea. What you want to do is to log in as the system administrator and then type the command power off to turn off the virtual machine, because this will make sure that the file system is shut down properly before the virtual machine is quote-unquote turned off. If you click the X button here to close QEMU, that's basically the same as yanking the cord out of a computer. Okay. The file system that we choose to use is fairly robust, but still, I don't think you should run the risk of hurting the file system. So this segment is all done. I hope you can at least get to this part and get to the text environment. What I'll do next is I'll start up the GUI, and I'll spend my time messing with that to start up the GUI, so that we don't waste any time in the video doing that. And then once we get into the GUI, we'll go ahead and do a few things that you need to do as well when you run your virtual machine. Alright, so I will talk to you again in the next video presentation.